Hello my friends. Paper Mario the Origami King is the latest Paper Mario game in the franchise. The Paper Mario series has been met with a lot of criticism. Despite this, I wanted to try out the game. Paper Mario used to be known for its fun storytelling bundled up in an RPG. As we now know, Nintendo has gotten rid of most of the RPG elements in the game. I personally never played any of the new styles of Paper Mario, so I wanted to see if it was as bad as people made it out to be. Going into this review, I will be reviewing this game as its own standalone game. Chances are, if you're hoping for this game to be anything close to the two originals, you will probably be disappointed. Alright, enough chit chat, let's hop right in. Let's start this off by talking about the combat. The classic Paper Mario game's combat system revolves around turn-based attacks. In the newest iteration, the combat system has opted to go towards a ring-type puzzle battle. The goal of this new battle system is to line up all the enemies in a way that your attacks are able to hit them. There is a much higher emphasis on the puzzle aspect because most battles are won based on lining up the enemies. There is very little emphasis on what weapons to use in battles. For the most part, you should always just use the strongest one available. I very much dislike this. Enemies in this game are quite diverse with interesting movesets. I personally found the origami design for the enemies to be quite fun. With all of that being said, the battle system is actually quite enjoyable at times. The combat system really shines during boss battles. I surprisingly enjoyed the boss battles quite a bit. The bosses really challenge the player to think about the boss's next moves and find certain ways to exploit their weaknesses. Now, despite me liking the combat system, the game definitely had design flaws. One of the many flaws is that there is very little incentive to fight normal enemies. I found myself avoiding enemies more and more as I played through the game. The only reason to fight enemies is to get coins. However, there are dozens of ways to collect coins that are 100 times less time consuming. There are holes around the levels you traverse through that you can fill up with confetti. These holes will grant you coins every time you fill them. This is just one of the many ways to collect coins in the game. Coins are needed to progress through certain areas in the game and buy equipment, so they are important. Despite their importance, there were times where the game literally just had coin roadblocks placed in the game to make sure you were collecting money. I very much disliked that this was the main purpose of coins. Additionally, let's talk about partners. Partners in this game are limited to plot devices. Their main purpose in battle is to clean up the mistakes the player may have made if they failed in lining up the enemies. One of the weirdest aspects of partners is that they have a chance to fail their attacks. I'm not exactly sure why the developers thought this was a good idea. It made the partners seem quite useless at times in battles. Partners also serve no purpose in boss battles at all. Despite this, I still enjoyed the addition of them in the plot. The last topic I would like to discuss before moving on to the story is the lack of customization and character progression. Let's first talk about the false sense of progression that you get in the game. Throughout Mario's journey, he will receive hearts that will increase his maximum HP. When his HP increases, his damage also increases. There's literally no reason for this concept to even exist besides to give the player the false sense that they got stronger. Enemies for the most part lack diversity in how you approach them due to how the combat system works. What the developers basically do is increase the stats of enemies to feel like the player is fighting stronger monsters. The reality though, nothing really changes. Normal enemies still get one shot by your moves, and enemies deal a decent amount of damage relative to the player's HP pool. The game would pretty much play the same if the HP pool and damage were consistent throughout the game. Despite there being accessories in the game, they serve as mere stat buffers. There's nothing unique about them, and there's little to no choice in customizing Mario. Along with that, usable items in this game are inferior to using weapons. I don't even understand the reason why items were included in this game when they have very little purpose. There's a limited amount of strategic planning when it comes to a battle because most of the time it's using the best weapon you have. Now moving on from this topic, let's talk about the story, world, and gameplay of Paper Mario the Origami King. After all of that bashing, let's start on a good note. The world and environment design is one of the best that I have seen in any Paper Mario game. The levels are vibrant, brimming with personality. This is by far my favorite aspect of the entire game. The art direction is superb, and you can really tell they put a lot of love and care in the world. The writing in this game is excellent and really made me enjoy certain characters that I would otherwise not enjoy. The origami designs for certain bosses were excellent. They were the highlight in terms of enemy designs. I wish that the thing bosses were designed with origami aspects rather than being office supplies. This would have made those bosses a lot more personable. Despite all the great things I have just said, this game starts off extremely slow and tedious. The speed and the pacing of this game is the main issue I have with it. Right off the bat, the opening sequence text dialogue is excessively drawn out. There is no reason the text bubbles should be this slow. Mario's movement is limited to walking and he walks very slow. I will be going over why Mario's movement is so important a bit later. The first 2 chapters are seriously some of the worst Paper Mario levels that I have played. A lot of the chapters consist of scavenger hunts and excessive random events that elongate the time spent in the level. In previous games, the events were very straightforward, going from one point to the next to progress in the game. This game, you have to do 5 random things that lead up to one single event to progress the story. Most of these small random events serve no purpose to the plot besides to make you spend more time in the game. Chapter 2 is the worst offender of them all. Although it had my favorite level design in the game, it was very slow and boring throughout the chapter. Furthermore, another topic I would like to cover is that Paper Mario the Origami King at its core is a huge compilation of minigames and a collectathon. Every single level has a minigame that you must play to progress the story. There were some minigames that were okay and some I even enjoyed. This was definitely something different than what I would expect from a Paper Mario game. Heck, you can even say that the battle system, in a sense, is a minigame. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this feature, but it's something that I noticed being a bit excessive at times. One of the worst aspects of some of these minigames is that if you fail them, then it's game over for you. This serves no purpose besides to add additional fluff into the game. Moving on to the collectathon aspect. The game gives you a task of rescuing all the toads to turn them back into their original form. Additionally, you are also able to collect treasure throughout the game, and you also have the mission of filling up all the holes with confetti. I have no problems with collectibles in games, but in this case I did not enjoy it. The reason for this is that Mario has little to no movement options. This made it a huge chore to complete these tasks. Had the developers given the player a movement option, such as the spin dash from the original N64, collecting items wouldn't be such a terrible thing to do. Many of these collectibles are gathered by interacting with the environment. Some of these interactions are quite a nuisance. The main way of interacting with the environment is swinging Mario's hammer around. Many times it felt more like I was swinging around randomly to find random interactions in the environment. I felt like this was a bit excessive, and the developers could have done a much better job in making these environmental interactions more unique. The last thing I want to cover is the overall story of the game. As I have stated before, the writing in this game is superb. The highlight of this comes from the small interactions that characters have with each other. Despite the great writing, the whole premise of the story is absolute trash. The lead up to find out the motive of the main villain is atrocious. I understand that the game is supposed to be lighthearted, but I honestly felt like the developers could have done a much better job in creating a deeper story. It's a shame that a game with such great moments is ruined by a weak plot. In conclusion, this game is a decent game overall. If you are looking for a lighthearted game with a ton of puzzles, then this game is perfect for you. This is by no means a game made for someone looking for something deeper. I can't say I recommend this game at a $60 price point. The game is played with arbitrary time extenders, and when comparing what it brings to the tables to other games, it is lacking. I still enjoyed the game overall, especially after Chapter 2, but it definitely had problems and isn't a perfect game. Thanks for watching guys. If you guys liked this review, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. I will be putting out some more Paper Mario content in the near future, so stay tuned.